Everyone knew you don't give a pregnant woman vaccines. Now they say, no, give them extra. I remember seeing that headline a couple years ago. Give pregnant women 2 shots for the flu. I was like, why? So there's a doubling down by the system. And with Dr. Mercola, I want to look at some other areas. The statin drugs. I've had medical doctors on like Dr. Blaylock. I've had many others on them. And they say basically it eats your brain. And Dr. Mercola is an alternative medicine guy, but also a medical doctor. I want to get his take on that. I also have heard a lot of claims out there. I know that eating healthy and being natural and all this stuff can help with type 2 diabetes. I know that Ray Kurzweil claims he's reversed his. A lot of people say this. I've heard Huckabee ads, and I asked Dr. Wallach this last week when he was on, Huckabee ads claiming they can just totally cure it. I would never say that because, A, I don't know there's proof of that, but I mean, B, the FDA would come after you. But, we certainly hear that. But I want to talk about the real things we know about why is diabetes exploding, and then what can you do? Because there's a lot of evidence I have seen that if you do it early enough, there is a lot you can do to reverse it. But I don't think there's a silver bullet. In fact, before we get to statins, let's hit diabetes first. A, why is it exploding? And from your deep research, which I really trust, what is the truth, the scoop on managing and reversing type 2 diabetes?
Well, I don't know that we can identify one specific variable as responsible for the explosion of diabetes, but there's a number of important factors. And one of them is one that I mentioned earlier, is this massive increase in the use of glyphosate to the tune of 1 billion pounds a year, because it kills the gut bacteria responsible for producing tryptophan and making this essential amino acid. So that reduction goes down. Tryptophan is converted to IGF-1, or insulin growth factor 1, which impairs insulin resistance. So there's a direct connection there. Also, this massive, another item I mentioned earlier, is everyone sitting. We have this epidemic of people sitting 8, 10, 12, 13 hours a day. So that's not beneficial.
So it's the sedentary lifestyle's big.
Sedentary lifestyle. And then processed foods is another huge factor. And the processed foods, of course, a subset of that would be sugar. But processed foods, I mean, the massive amounts of industrial chemicals and processing that goes into food. I mean, that is probably this in addition to cutting out your sodas. I mean, artificial soda is even worse than diet soda, or artificial sweeteners, are this in replacing processed foods with real food. The simple strategy, and you can in fact cure diabetes. There is type 2 diabetes, not type 1. Cure diabetes completely. There's no question. I've seen it. I've facilitated that process in so many people. But there's people on your show that in the past have said that you can cure diabetes with a magic supplement. Now, the supplement might be useful, but yes, I don't think any supplement is going to cure a disease. Ultimately, your body produces the disease, and the mistake of using supplements is like it's the same allopathic strategy that traditional conventional medicine uses, and that they have a drug to treat the symptoms. Well, I mean, supplements are better, and they're typically less expensive, less dangerous, but they're not addressing the cause. That we have to address the cause if we're going to make these problems disappear. And interestingly, there's this common denominator, this common thread with almost every single chronic degenerative illness, which includes not only diabetes, obesity, elevated cholesterol levels, and cardiovascular disease, stroke, Alzheimer's.
Don't be sedentary. Don't eat GMO. Drink purified water. Get sleep. But then also supplement. You need the supplements as the building blocks, but the healing comes from your body.
Absolutely. And that's what I review in my book, Effortless Healing. I review these strategies and how to do that, how to effortlessly, simply, easily, and cost-effectively integrate them into your life in a master plan. So, because it is a challenge. I mean, you can get the information. I mean, we've published tens, probably hundreds of thousands of articles on our site over the last 20 years, but it's hard to read those, understand them, and integrate it into a plan. That's what we've done in this book. It's been
I can't wait to read it.
It's been 11 years since my last New York best time seller, which was the No Grain Diet, which is years ahead of the time. Many copycat books have been out since then. But the initial strategy is limit your grains, not eliminate them in everyone, because they can be healthy if you don't have insulin resistance. But if you have insulin resistance, as most of us do, then limiting grains and processed foods is a really useful strategy to improve your health, and dramatically.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. It's so exciting because it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complex. The tools are relatively simple. You just have to understand them and get the information so that you are built up and and fortified against the misdirection and the deception and the fraud that is so pervasive in traditional media.
All right, let's expand on that.
It's only owned by six companies, and then you tell people about that all the time. So they control the media. And tomorrow I'm interviewing Cheryl Atkinson. I'm sure you remember her. She was CBS investigative reporter and wrote the book Stonewall. And she so cleverly reveals all the frauds and deception in the industry. And she's left it now, thankfully.
It's amazing. Let's expand on some of these chemicals and things. Statins. I mean, I've talked to so many medical doctors, brain surgeons, you name it, like Blaylock and others. They say it literally, your brain just rots when you take these. And now they want to put them in the water supply or even make kids take them. Dr. Mercolos, what's going on with the statins?
Well, it's based on this flawed premise, the cholesterol hypothesis, which was started by Ansel Keys in the 50s, and literally persisted for more than half a century. And based on that, the pharmaceutical companies were able to develop a strategy that does indeed effectively lower cholesterol, lowers it very effectively. But does that necessarily mean it's good for you? No. Most of the studies show that it actually, you know, these studies, there's another interesting book that I just finished last week called Doctored Data that gives people the tools to understand how to dissect these studies that are fraudulently presented as evidence of the efficacy of these strategies that are being recommended and prescribed on a regular basis. I don't know if you're aware of this, Alex, but 1 in 4 Americans over the age of 40, 1 in 4 are taking statin drugs. It's insane. It's 25% of the population. They're giving them out like candy. And in almost none of those cases, very, very rare exception. Even then, you can make an argument that justifies not using them. They're just not needed because your body, it requires cholesterol. It's a normal part of the process to stay healthy.
Isn't most of your brain made up of cholesterol?
It's made up of fat. The majority of your brain is made up of fat, and cholesterol is a large portion of that. You know, these, in fact, if some of the studies that were used to support the benefit of lowering cholesterol, if you look at them more carefully and tease out the details, you'll find that the people with the highest cholesterol were people who lived the longest.
I know.
Especially with older. So, I mean, they've totally distorted that. They can.
I mean, my uncle was in a motorcycle accident and has epilepsy, and I mean, 20 years ago. They told him they said, start eating really fatty diets of these healthy fats. And his epilepsy got like 80% better because he just started, he was trying to do a non-fat diet or low-fat diet to be healthy. And then it was like, oh, my God, his epilepsy got a lot better once he started eating fat.
Well, there's a strategy called the ketogenic diet, which, you know, is useful for some diseases like intractable seizures. So when you go on healthy fats, not fried foods and bacon, but healthy fats like avocados, coconut oil, butter, egg yolks, macadamia nuts, almonds, not almonds, but pecans. So these are healthy fats that are low in protein. You know, and the other thing that diabetic person said is that people can eat 24 eggs a day and be healthy to prevent Alzheimer's. Now, you know, I'm a huge fan of eggs. I think they're one of the healthiest foods on the planet, but 24 is a little bit excessive. There's 7 grams of protein in an egg, so you're looking at 150 grams of protein, which is probably more than twice as much protein as people need to eat. I
think 20 is what Schwarzenegger would eat when he was like world champion.
Yeah, and that's fine. If you're using it for a specific purpose like competitive bodybuilding, you could justify that, but the average person is not doing that, and their protein requirements are far closer to 50 than 150 grams a day. And an excess of anything that's good is going to be a problem, including eggs. So they're great. I try to have a dozen or 2 dozen a week, but certainly not 2 dozen a day. You know, you got to keep things in balance and perspective.
Well, I tell you, what about alcohol? What's your view on alcohol?
That's an interesting question. There's so much controversy on it because there's a lot of studies that show, especially red wine, that it's useful to decrease many diseases. Then there's other studies that say that alcohol in any amount is a problem. I think, you know, as long as it's part of a balanced diet, that you're not insulin resistant, you're eating lots of good vegetables, you're exercising, you're sleeping, you're doing a lot of things right. In moderation, it's probably okay.
So if you had a couple of glasses of red wine a week, probably good for you. But
I don't know that it is good or good. It isn't good. But what I can be very confident of, that if your other lifestyle strategies are healthy, then if it's not beneficial, your body can overcome that and compensate for it.
Sure. What do you think of the UT study? It was a big one that came out last year, and it showed that people that that have, I think it was like 2 drinks a day, had a higher IQ. I'm not saying it gave them a higher IQ. They just higher IQ, made more money, and lived longer. I mean,
I don't recall the study, and as I said, the studies are so. You have to look at the funding source, how they did it, how they picked their.
I think it was Anheuser-Busch. I'm joking.
Was a correlated study, but there's a whole social aspect to drinking alcohol, and being social itself in relationships is a strong variable in improving healthy lifespan. So if you're increasing that component with the alcohol, then it may overcome that. So there's so many.
Sure. So it's the having fun that might be making you live longer, not the drinking itself.
Yeah, that is certainly a possibility, and I haven't studied it carefully enough to definitively give you an answer on that.
Yeah, there's the University of Texas study. Moderate drinking helps middle-aged and older people live longer.
You can't believe anything from Texas.
Especially me, yeah. No, I mean, obviously it's moderation, but and it probably varies person to person. We certainly know it's better than Prozac. What are some of the things that, I mean, I've always read about studies with St. John's wort is better than Prozac and double-blind studies. I mean, I think I read that on Mercola like 15 years ago. Refresh